So we have a number of expats or prospective expats on here that are asking about how we would model, say, taxes in another country, or what it would be like to purchase a property outside of the U.S. Do you have any answers for that? Any quick answers for that?
Yeah, quick answers would be, if I were like running this from Canada, if I'm living in Canada or maybe Switzerland, I would set up the program, I would run it, set up all the inputs, convert it to dollars, so convert the Swiss franc into dollars, and put all your inputs in dollars. But then under taxes, I would specify that tax policy, future tax changes, that starting this year, taxes are going to drop by negative 99%. So basically turn off the taxes. I think that works. Must be minus 50 or more. Well, this is minus 70. So I think this should work. I would turn off, minus 50 or more. It doesn't want me to lower taxes below, it doesn't want me to drop taxes below 50%. We're going to change that so expats can drop their taxes more like 99%. Basically turn off their federal and state, all their US taxes, run the program, and then come back. I just reset this to 0, and then come back to special to household here and restore special expenses, and then enter their path of taxes every year that they estimate based on their what they think the Swiss taxes will be if they're having to pay Swiss taxes, and put in their best approximation as special expenses for their path of taxes. And then you won't have the taxes being perfectly right, but you'll have it approximately right. Another thing you could do is to enter under current and future earnings. You could enter earnings after taxes. You could do that, and you could put in a rate of return that's an after-tax rate of return rather than a pre-tax rate of return. So there are ways that you can do this, and we can help you. You can certainly send us customer support tickets or shoot me an email, and we can help you use the program. Ultimately, when the company gets bigger, we will be able to specify versions of the program that work for people living in Switzerland, even just for Swiss people. But then there's also the question of expats, and there's the foreign tax credit that has to be incorporated. So this is not so simple, but it is feasible. I do want to say before we reach the hour, I know some people are going to have to go, that there's a way that you can help us help you through time, which is first of all, we have resources that I didn't mention, but are going to be in this PowerPoint that you're going to receive, links that you can go to learn more about the software. But then we have set up a special referral program. If you go to your account, if you log into our program, click on your account, or is it the purchase button, Alex? I forget whether it's the, anyway.
It's under your account, you'll see it.
Oh, yeah, you click your account, and then you're going to come to, I hope everybody can see my cursor, you're going to come to your referral link. If you mail this to a friend or a relative or a colleague, they can then click on that, go and purchase our software. If you're going to recommend it, we hope you will recommend our software to your friends and relatives and colleagues. And then when they buy the software, automatically you'll get 2 extra months extended to your MaxiFi license. So again, if you just grab this URL, just select it and copy it, and then put that into an email, send it to your friends and other buddies, and ask them or suggest that they, if you think they could benefit from the program, suggest that they buy the software, and then it's going to help you by giving you 2 months of extra license time on MaxiFi before you have to renew. So Alex, go ahead, back to your questions.
Okay. So a lot of folks are wondering how to model any sort of inheritance or special bequest. Is the program capable of doing that?
Yeah, you go to, in the case of this couple, Jack and, so I can get this out of the way. You go under here under estate planning, and you can specify a special bequest that Jack would leave regardless of when he dies. So if he says he wants to leave 500,000, it may be the program is likely to probably need to recommend a life insurance policy for him so that he can leave 500,000 if he dies at the end of the current year. So the bequest amounts here for him and for Sarah right here are regardless of when you die. Now you can also enter funeral expenses, which are death specific, but another way to deal with leaving money to kids is setting up a reserve fund, and you can put in a reserve fund amount in that part of the program. But then you can also specify under special expenses a gift maybe that you're going to make at age 90. Maybe you want to leave $600,000 to somebody, and you just want to, or just keep it in reserve. You want to specify $600,000 outlay, a special expenditure when you're 90. Maybe it's $300,000 each for each of these spouses, or 600 if they both make it to that point. And then the program will know to save up, and we'll have that extra money there to leave to who's ever around, the kids or other heirs. So there's several different ways. There's 3 different ways. You can enter bequests, which are going to be reference money that's left no matter when you die. You can enter a reserve fund under reserve funds, and you can enter also you can enter special expenditures. And those 3 different ways can handle leaving money to the next generation. How about next question?
Okay. Right. Well, a lot of people are also wondering how or if the program can model rental properties.
Yeah, so here you come to household, and you click on, you reactivate real estate. You'd enter a property called, let's say, rental condo, rental unit. And you can enter as many rental properties or other properties that you have, whether or not they're rented. Is it residential? No. It's currently owned? Yes. Year it's placed in service. So you get a whole set of a wizard type questionnaire for the market value, the basis, accumulated unallowed losses, real appreciation. Do you plan to sell the property? If so, we're going to ask you how much you'll sell that. Well, the market value is what we assume you'll sell it at, apart from any appreciation that you can specify. And do you have a mortgage on it? Do you have any expenses? Do you have any receipts? So the program is going to deal very carefully with your real estate property. You might have 1 property, you might have 20. You can enter them all, and we're going to deal with the depreciation and all aspects of that very carefully, and you'll get the taxes exactly right based on the everything you've got in your plan, including the real estate. So let me stop there.
Okay, so like I said, we have lots and lots of questions. I think if we answered all of these questions, we'd probably be here until 3 o'clock in the morning. But
okay.
I'm going to try to condense these, and we'll go as fast as we can.
Go ahead.
One question I have from the beginning here, the first question, which I promised the questioner that I would answer or have you answer. This is from Scott Shipper. He asks, what is the best way to model sequence of returns risk? I'm already in retirement and concerned about the 3.5% safe return assumption in MaxiFi being too optimistic in the short term, given the outlook for both stocks and bonds.
Yeah, and we're concerned about that now too. We weren't so much concerned 2 months ago, but we're very concerned about it now, which is why it's Scott, right? Scott, we are.
Yes, Scott.
Why I ran this case with an assumption of a 1.25%, not a 3.25%, not a 3.5% nominal rate, and I ran assumed inflation as 1.25 because this implies a zero real return, which is what a long-term TIPS inflation, Treasury inflation protected securities are yielding over 30 years. So we will, I think this Sunday, if I've got it right, be putting up a new release in which case these default values are all going to be these numbers. So that if you're running the program with 3.25, just change your values here to lower values. If you're running the first two reports, which are deterministic, which are assuming that you're going to get these rates of return for sure. But if you want to incorporate what you refer to sequence of return risk, which means that you're investing at risk where what return you get from one year to the next depends on what you're investing in and how well that particular asset does, well, then that's where the Monte Carlo analysis will help. So what we, I recommend that you go to reports and start running, and I'm not going to have time to take people through this report right now, but it lets you set up, just very briefly, lets you set up 3 different strategies. So this, for example, is a 50-50 stock bond portfolio that the couple's holding in both regular assets and retirement accounts. And here's a 20-80 bond stock, and here's an 80-20 stock bonds. It's risky, this is safe, and this is the base strategy. And then we ask some questions about, these questions refer, and I won't get into it right now, about how aggressively you want to be spending. And then after that, you start running the Monte Carlo results. And I will take you through those very quickly in the next webinar because I want everybody to see what's possible. But for right now, I think I'm just going to not get into that because it's a longer discussion exactly how the Monte Carlo runs. There's lots of explanation. There's a video about it. I think you can figure it out fine on your own, but we're going to do a full webinar and we'll do it next time about the Monte Carlo risk analysis, okay?
Okay, yes, okay, here's another question that we've been getting a lot of. This is from Andre, but several other people have been asking about this. How do we handle HSA accounts?
HSA accounts, I believe we have a workaround for those that we haven't incorporated those yet into the program, but it's very high on our list to incorporate those. So if you look under the help center, under frequently asked questions, there should be a workaround for how to enter HSA accounts. And if there's not, just shoot me an email, kotlikoff@gmail.com, and I'll figure it out with you how to do it, and we will put up an FAQ right away. But I'm almost positive we've got one there. I don't know if you remember Alex or not, but you probably, I think Dan is the one who put it up. But anyway, it's not hard, and we will have it as part of our asset inputs. We're going to be redoing all the assets so that retirement accounts and regular assets and HSAs and 529s are all in the same place. All the inputs are being entered in the same place, and it will be much easier for people. And it will be, that's high on our list, but we have some other things that we have even higher priority. I'll just mention a few of them. I can't tell you exactly how fast we'll have it done, but one of the things that we're working on right now is having the program plan for the rest of the year rather than plan for the entire year. Right now, if it's right now, we're in May, and the program is really planning as if it's January 1st. So clearly the stock market dropped. So I would say if you're running the program today, lower your initial assets in light of, to some degree, based on how much the stock market has dropped. But hopefully in the very near term, we're going to be running, the program will run based on it being May 6th. And it will tell you what to do just for the rest of the year. It won't tell you what to do in the prior part of the year, which is already over. And it will be taking in your actual assets, and we're going to try and set things up so that you can tell the program to pull in your data from your checking account, from your retirement accounts, and it will automatically be brought in so that when you run the program, your exact value of your retirement account will be available to you, right there in the input screen, and you won't have to go look for it and put in the current value. So that's kind of our top priority. Then we will get to things like HSA accounts, but our top priority right now is to get this thing to run on rest of year planning basis, which is the rest of your life, but also for this year, just the rest of the year, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to plan for part of the year that's already passed. So that's where we're moving. And it's taken us a while to get there, but these things are not easy to change that quickly.
Okay. Well, that actually helps answer a lot of people's questions. They were asking exactly about that. Here's another question that we're getting a lot of. This is from Tom Russell. He asks, what are your thoughts on the solvency and potential Social Security rate cuts, and how to address that concern in MaxiFi?
Yeah, Social Security is broke beyond broke. If you look at the trustees report that just came out in April, and it did not incorporate anything, as far as I can tell, about this COVID-19 economic catastrophe depression that we're into right now. And by the way, it looks like we're having a depression that's far beyond the Great Depression, just so everybody understands. I mean, output this quarter, that's to say March, June, and April, May, and June. When the numbers come out, the output will likely be 40% below where it was in the first 3 months of the year. So GDP is likely to be 40% below, and that's a 40% drop in 3 months. In the Great Depression, GDP fell by 26%, but over 3 years, between 29 and 33. So anyway, the trustees report has something like a $53 trillion unfunded liability. The system is short, like 2+ years of GDP of our country. It's totally broke. So there could be some reductions in benefits, especially for higher income people. So what I would think about doing is going here to Social Security and Medicare under settings and assumptions and telling the program that starting in some year, maybe in 5 years, that Social Security will be reduced by negative whatever 20%. Your benefits might be cut negative 22%, whatever you want, and run the program that way. And it will change when you run the maximized feature. It will change the what it recommends you do with respect to Social Security. So now that I realize, recalling that next time we thought we'd talk about the maximization report. So it may be that we work on the Monte Carlo, the webinar after. So what we'll try and do is move these webinars up pretty quickly in time so that we can get to the Monte Carlo report in the third webinar. If we have some time in the second webinar, we can get to it. But I think the second webinar, I should focus on maximization, finding safe ways to raise your living standard, some of which are going to be generated by running the maximized plan, but some of them are going to be run by setting up alternative profiles, because not everything is automated. This thing is like robo-optimizing your living standard over certain things, Social Security, retirement account decisions, But then there's other things you can do, like Roth conversions, like prepaying your mortgage, like paying off your mortgage, like downsizing, like moving states, like working longer, all of which can raise your living standard safely. So we'll talk about those things next time. Go ahead, Alex. What's your next question?
Here's from Scott Singer. This is sort of in reference to what you just said. How can pulling funds from retirement accounts to pay off a mortgage make sense, given having to pay taxes on the large withdrawal?
Well, I didn't know they would, and this is where the beauty of the program comes in. These things are so complicated and interconnected that one has to just actually run the thing and see whether it makes sense. Right now, the return on inflation index, on Treasury bonds is 1.25%. The typical mortgage out there is 3.75%. So there's like a 2.5% differential in rates of return. So if you pay off your mortgage, you're going to earn 2.5% percentage points, 2.5% real with no uncertainty, absolutely safely. So this is like the safest investment there is, which is paying off high interest debts. And most mortgages are still very high interest because they haven't, the refinance rates have not come down. So you're absolutely right. What's the person's name again? Alex, is it Frank?
Oh, I think we've moved on.
Okay. So
I'm looking at a very large list here. Yep.
Okay. Well, you're absolutely right that there's going to be higher taxes, and I'll show you this case next time. But in the short run, you can read about it if you go to Kotlikoff. Well, just go to I'm going to just pull up in a different browser our software, and I'll show you where I wrote a column about this particular case. So if you click on let's see, our story, our articles, click on our articles, and just click on this Forbes article about paying off your mortgage. It shows a couple that can earn, I think it's about $100,000 just paying off their mortgage by withdrawing from their 401k. So you say to yourself, well, how can that be? They're going to have to pay extra taxes. Well, yeah, but they're going to get this. They're going to be paying no mortgage. They're going to get a 2.5% real return on a very big mortgage, on a very big kind of negative asset. So that's got a big advantage to it. And then the other thing is that the value of a 401k deferral has largely gone away, which has been the deferral value. Hey, if I don't pay taxes, I can earn interest on the taxes that I'm not paying this year and pay taxes in the future. I'll have a deferral advantage. But because the interest rates are so low, that advantage has gone away. Indeed, if we were taxing real interest income rather than nominal, if the tax system were fully inflation indexed, there would be zero deferral advantage right now because the real interest rate is zero. But we actually tax nominal interest income, not real interest income. So there's still a small deferral advantage, but it's much smaller. So the tax cost of taking your money out early has gone down. The real tax advantage of a 401k is being in a lower tax bracket. You want to take out your money when you're in a lower tax bracket. And for people that have just lost their job, this is a year they're going to be in a low tax bracket. So this is a year, and that's the kind of couple I looked at. This is a year where their tax bracket is going to be otherwise low, and therefore it's a good time to take their withdrawals because they're going to be taking, not withdrawing everything, but enough in this case to pay off their mortgage because they're going to be a relatively low tax bracket to start with. Now, in the case I'm running, their taxes do shoot up by taking out so much money to pay off their mortgage. So they do get, in effect, pushed into a higher bracket, or at least the same bracket after they do the withdrawal. but the extra taxes are really offset by the saving on getting a higher rate of return on this negative asset, or paying a lower interest rate on a negative on a liability, paying a lower interest rate on liability. So I was surprised that that there's such a big advantage, but please run this yourself. I ran this for my wife and I, whether we should do this, and because I continue to be, well, since I plan to retire maybe when I'm 75, and I'll be taking most of my retirement account money out then, for me, it didn't turn out to be a big deal advantage, but for this couple, which seems quite typical, is a big number here. So it's worth looking at, checking out. Let's do the next question, Alex.
So we had a question about, do we have a list of advisors that subscribe to our sort of philosophy of planning of consumption smoothing, discretionary spending smoothing?
Yeah, we do. I'm going to go back to, hang on. If you go here to advisors, we have a menu item called advisors using MaxiFi. And I hope that all the advisors on the call here, if they haven't done so already, will go to my account, log in, and add their card to this list. And it's a growing list, and you can see we have about 110 or maybe 150 advisors right now. We only have about 30 of them listed here, but we're trying to get everybody listed. And some of the advisors are really just learning the system, so they haven't put their information up. But there are these people, if you want to work with them, they are all using our software, and we're here to help them and in effect help you. So you have two ways to go. Buy it, contact one of the advisors and have them run the program for you, or get the software yourself and run it yourself, or do both. Get the software yourself, run it, and have them run it, and you will then be able to discuss your plan with them and both be on the same page.
So we have a number of questions about running a Roth conversion. Here's a specific one, but you might want to just talk about how we do that in the program. This is a question from Richard. It's how do you model traditional to Roth IRA conversions? Does it use the post 2025 TJCA tax rates?
Okay, so very good question, Richard. Let me, I'm actually don't want to run the report. I just want to show you something. Let me look at the base profile here just to go back. If I go, first of all, on that second question, under taxes, you can tell the program whether you want the tax policy to be the current tax law, which does have a reversion to the pre-2017 tax code, or TCJA changes made permanent. And then the alternative is tax law prior to TCJA, which is just current tax law, but I guess we put that in just in case this current tax law was not clear. Actually, that's just a header now that I think about it. So you can choose what tax system to be in after I guess it's 2029, is it, or 2028? I forget the year that it's supposed to revert back formally, but that was, as far as everybody believes, just a gimmick. But now that things are fiscally getting very dicey, we could, and if we have a Democratic president, we may end up reverting back. But anyway, the question of the Roth conversion, let's suppose that Sarah wants to convert her Roth, and you go here to retirement accounts, and I think it's under here that we ask the question, Roth conversion. So if you want to add Roth conversion, you just say, I'd like to convert, like $30,000 starting this year, ending in, let's say 3 years, ending when I'm 55. So that all can be and then you just run the program, and it's going to do the Roth conversion automatically. It's going to take the money out of your retirement account, your 401k, and put it into a Roth, and it'll see whether there's any lifetime tax advantages. And if your lifetime discretionary spending goes up, the reason is that your lifetime taxes have gone down. So it's really easy to run a Roth conversion. It's also really easy to run prepaying your house. For example, if you want to specify extra payments on your house, you just come down here to annual monthly payments. We've added these two features in the last 2 months. So please do keep looking at the program and look at our emails about updates, because we're always adding features. We have lots and lots of users now that are coming up with good suggestions, and do send us your ideas, and we will put them in our list. If you guys can go out of your way to help us get more customers, and like other companies, we are seeing a very major decline in our revenues, so that's a major concern, like it is for any company. If you can help us spread the word about our company and send them this link and get yourself a little more time on your license, then we can hire more engineers and get more things into our program that we have on our list, and help you. You'll help us help you. So next question, Alex.
There's been several questions about how or whether the program can incorporate inherited IRAs from deceased parents, for example, and the RMDs from those IRAs.
Yeah, so and the law has just been changed on that under, I forget the name of this, the Secure Act. Maybe that's the Secure Act, I think. So, and we have changed some aspects of our software. For example, the RMDs, the required minimum distribution start date, is now 72 in our software, and that's what it is in the new law, thanks to, I'm pretty sure it's called the Secure Act, that's just been passed. Now, we don't have inherited IRAs yet into the program, but there is a workaround under special receipts. If you have an inherited IRA and you have to take it out over 10 months on a taxable basis, just enter it as a special receipt that's taxable, and that'll get it exactly right, even though it won't, be as nice a solution as we'll ultimately have when we actually let you enter your inherited IRAs. But there is a workaround. Go to the help center, look at FAQ, but or shoot me an email, kotlikov@gmail, and we will get you all sorted out on how to deal with that. And it is on our list to get it to be a more fluid input.
Okay. Here's another, this is a basic question and a good one. This is from Laura. She says, I'm not a financial professional, but I use the program. Can you provide simple definition of today's dollars versus nominal dollars so I can understand what to enter in those fields?
Okay, so today's dollars would be what things cost today. Maybe a hot dog today is costing $1, or well, in Boston it costs, let's say, $5. And just because of inflation, in 10 years it's going to cost $25. So if you have some, let's say, some money coming in, let's say you have $10,000 coming in 20 years, when prices are going to be a lot higher, well, they're going to buy relatively few hot dogs, $10,000, because the hot dog price is going to go up by a factor of 5. So they're really only going to buy about 2,000 hot dogs rather than 10,000. So what we would say is, what we'd like you to tell us about is either that you're going to get $10,000 just in pieces of, $10,000 $1 bills. If you're going to get it, that's the nominal amount you're going to get, $10,000 $1 bills, or tell us that you're going to get it, get something in today's dollars, and then you would enter $2,000 as a special receipt coming 10 years from now. So if your labor income, for example, if you're making $50,000 and you think it's going to stay even with inflation, just enter it in today's dollars, because then we will say, okay, in today's dollars, she's always going to earn $50,000. She's not going to earn, suppose prices went up by a factor of 200 because of hyperinflation, which could happen. Telling us that you're going to earn, $500,000 in 20 years, it's all due to inflation. It's not going to buy any more hot dogs. Well, it's just easier to say your salary is going to keep even with inflation. You're going to earn 50,000 in today's dollars. It's today's purchasing power is another way of putting it. Alex, do you have a different way of saying it? Maybe I'm not the best in this one.
I think you said it well.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's a question from Stephen. This is about Monte Carlo. He says, I'm wondering about the confidence you have in the Monte Carlo analysis. 500 runs seems low from what I've read. Many consulting actuarial firms have run pension scenarios with 100,000 runs or more. 500 just seems low. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to give users the option. I have to talk to our engineer about this, the option to increase the number of Monte Carlo simulation runs. What we're finding is that if your plan is pretty sustainable, if you have lots of special expenditures, things that you have to pay, and housing expenses, lots of fixed spending, then the plan can be sensitive to the number of runs. The results that we're finding can be sensitive to the number of runs, and running more runs will give a better picture. But if for most people, we're finding that the results are not, they do differ from running it once, one time versus another, the next day or the next hour, the next 10 minutes. You are getting somewhat different answers because we are randomly drawing returns, but they're not that much different. And we're trying to kind of trade off accuracy with time. We don't want people to wait a half an hour to get an answer. But I understand perfectly, or very well, not perfectly, but very well, what you're raising, which is certain Monte Carlo calculations are highly sensitive to the number of runs, and you need to run a zillion runs to get something precise. It very much depends on what it is you're calculating. If you're talking about an average over living standards, over utility, which is kind of what we're looking at here ultimately when we get to the expected utility calculations or the average happiness calculations that I'm going to be telling you about. If you're a 50-year-old couple and you're running 500 simulations, you're looking at 25,000 possible living standards, because it's 500. If you have 50 years left, between 50 to 100, maximum age of life is 100. We're talking about 25,000 possible living standard outcomes based on the 500 trajectory. So we're kind of averaging the happiness from those 500 outcomes. So it's actually more things going into the calculations, more Monte Carlos, if you like, than it may seem, because of the nature of the way of what exactly it is that we're calculating. But I know what you're talking about. I know that there's different methods of doing numerical integration, which is basically what we're doing here. There's quadrature methods, and there's this kind of basically drawing methods, and there are much more sophisticated techniques that we use in research. If I could use quadrature in this context, I would, but the distributions are not, and maybe this will spur me to think about a more accurate method of numerical integration. But for right now, I think the best answer would be we give users like you the option to run the program with many more Monte Carlo runs. And if it takes a half a day for you to run and be really fully satisfied that you're getting something with very, very little error in terms of the average results, then you'll just run it for half a day and be happier. So I'll talk to my engineer. If he lets me do that, if he lets us do that, we'll do it. Next question, Alex.
Oh, there's so many. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out the best one to add here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have 500 people still on the phone waiting for, so people are very interested in these answers, which is great.
Right. Sorry, 1 second. Let me just find a good one here.
I wonder about
the software hand. Oh yeah, go ahead.
You can have this thing show me because I'm trying to show my to talk to people. They might want to see who I am actually, but when I click on the video thing, it doesn't show up. Any control you have on your side? No. Okay.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Here's a question from Jay. Can the software handle the case where one needs to limit MAGI in order to qualify for the ACA health insurance subsidies in the years before Medicare?
Yeah. So what's being referred to there is the fact that if you're in a state where they haven't expanded Medicaid up to the point where Obamacare kicks in, you could earn too much money to get Medicaid and too little money to get the Obamacare subsidy. And then if you earn too little money on that, you won't get the Obamacare subsidy. So let's say you're within a couple $100 or $1,000 of getting the Obamacare subsidy. Find somebody, and you've got no government help at all on your health insurance, which is extremely expensive. Find somebody to hire you to do something. Take out their trash, whatever it is, and pay you the $1,000 so you get over the threshold, and you'll be able to get your ACA benefit. Now, we don't have ACA programmed in our software here because we're dealing more with people that are not, well, maybe we should, but we haven't gotten to the point where we are including it into the program. But I know the problem you're facing, and you can certainly try and adjust your earnings to exceed the threshold and make sure your earnings stay high enough to keep on Obamacare, because earning an extra dollar, if you just go beyond that threshold, can mean thousands, maybe even $10,000 in extra Obamacare subsidies, going from $0 to $10,000 in subsidies. So it's really important for you and your family to keep an eye on that. Is that answering the question properly, Alex?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Here's a question from Lisa. Why is it desirable to draw down non-retirement assets first? Can this be overridden since I want to keep my rainy day fund?
Yeah. First of all, unless you specify you're selling your house is partly the equity in your house will be a rainy day fund, because the program does not automatically sell it unless you tell the program you're going to sell it. And then you can also use the reserve fund to specify a rainy day fund. The last thing to say is that the reason you want to take your retirement account money earlier than your Social Security, and this is true in general, it's not necessarily true for you, is that the return, the advantage of waiting to take Social Security is so huge. They give you, compared to taking your benefit at 62, the benefit at 70 adjusted for inflation is something like 70% higher. It used to be 76%. These days, with a higher normal retirement age, it's more like 70% higher adjusted for inflation. So it's perfectly safe. So you really can't beat this. Nothing that you get on the stock market on a risk-adjusted basis is remotely as good as being patient with Social Security. And this is really going to be true, as you can see for yourselves in running this. Even if tax rates are increased or Social Security benefits are cut in the future, it's still going to be advantageous to be patient. maybe not quite up through age 70, and maybe not as advantageous to be patient, but it's still going to be very advantageous to be patient.
This is a question from Kelly. She says, on the inflation question that we were talking about before, is discretionary spending as expressed in the program today's spending power, or how is inflation factored in? If in the example used, the couple has $65,000 to spend each year, that will buy a lot less in 10 years, for example.
That's a good question. Our program is super careful on dealing with inflation. We are showing every single number in today's dollars, and we're doing the calculations of taxes in actual dollars, nominal dollars, because that's the way the IRS does them, and the tax system is not perfectly adjusted for inflation. So we have to do everything on the tax side in nominal dollars, but we show everything in today's dollars, in the cost of what a current hot dog costs. So you can be assured that our software is not giving you some false idea about the future because we're not adjusting for inflation. We're doing quite the opposite. We're being very, very careful to make sure we do adjust for inflation, because a lot of other programs out there will say that you're going to be a multimillionaire in the future. Your assets are going to be worth $1 zillion, but in terms of what they can buy, the purchasing power, how many hot dogs they can actually get for you, they're not going to be that much. And so we don't want to give people the impression they're going to be really super rich when that's not the case. So that's why we show every single number in today's dollars. We've had lots of people, particularly financial planners, to tell you the truth, over the years yell at us that we need to show all the results in nominal dollars because they're used to showing their results in nominal dollars. But we've said, no, we feel that's too misleading. We don't want to show anybody numbers that don't really connect back to hot dogs.
This is a question from Maria, and it's a question that a couple people have been asking. If people are using MaxiFi, do they need to keep using Maximize My Social Security? Does MaxiFi have all the capabilities of Maximize My Social Security?
Does MaxiFi have all the MaxiFi has all the capacities of Maximize My Social Security, but it does a zillion more things. It gives you a full lifetime plan. It lets you maximize your lifetime spending. It lets you deal with cash flow issues. It lets you deal with how to save taxes, how to deal with retirement accounts, how to downsize your, whether downsizing your home is something you're up for. Is it worth it? How much will I save by downsizing my home? Can I really save a lot of money by moving states? It does, our Social Security tool is $40 to households. It's $250 for financial planners. Our MaxiFi tool, the basic version, is $99, and the premium version that has Monte Carlo analysis is $100, I think, $35. And the professional version for MaxiFi Planner, the Pro version, is $499 the first year, and I think it's $379 in to update. So we're not talking for households a lot more money, and they can make it up by running our program and seeing how to save a bundle. I mean, look, I just ran cases that saved people $600,000, $700,000 by getting them to work longer, or getting them to optimize their Social Security, or getting them to move to Nevada. You just saw that in front of your eyes. That's going to pay for our software a zillion times over. So I think that's worth keeping in mind. I did want to show you one thing which I haven't told you yet. But if you're trying to enter regular assets, we have an asset. You can add an asset, and the asset might include a reserve fund right here. And you can have the option of entering an asset and telling it it's a reserve, it's in the reserve fund, that you don't want to actually spend it. So I've mentioned reserve funds a couple times, but I haven't shown you how you actually get it to work. And we used to have it as we just changed this just the other day to make it a little more expeditious in terms of entering inputs. So when you enter your regular assets, you can say, well, hey, what kind of a regular asset is it? But also whether you want to keep it on reserve, whether you want to have it be spent through time as part of smoothing your living standard, or whether you want to keep it on reserve. Alex, next question.
So this is a question from Leonard. How does the program handle home equity lines of credit?
Okay. I think the way to do that would be to enter a second mortgage. Under housing, you have edit here. You can come here and add another mortgage, click add another mortgage. And then this could be your equity line of credit. You specify the principal, how much you're going to, so under the mortgage, how much you're going to borrow. Maybe it's a $100,000 line of credit. The monthly payment, maybe it's a 5-year thing you're going to repay, and then you're all set. So it's like a second mortgage.
Right.
Next question.
I just want to clarify on the question before that. I just want to reiterate that MaxiFi does have all of the basically all of the capabilities, essentially all of the capabilities for dealing with Social Security built into it. So Maximize My Social Security is a standalone program. MaxiFi incorporates the Social Security analysis. It's a full-fledged plan program. So there's a bunch of questions about how to smooth discretionary spending. People are confused as to why their discretionary spending is maybe up or down. This is a question from Dina. She says that she sees a 20% bump up in her discretionary spending at age 75, and it continues through retirement. How do I spend more? How do I add more spending in the earlier years and reduce spending in the later years? And that's a question that we've gotten a lot, which is, how am I able to change how much discretionary spending, or how high or low I want my living standard to be over time?
Okay, so a couple things. Right here you have, I'm going back to the base case I ran before. You see the discretionary spending is dropping, and this household is not borrowing constrained. They're not in a position where they have where their living standard has to go up because they can't borrow against future income. But if they did have, let's say, in 2055, a $2 billion inheritance, or let's say a $2 million inheritance, then their living standard, as well as their discretionary spending, we'd see both of these curves jump up at 2055 because they cannot borrow against that money. So there's two things you could do. You could say, hey, I can borrow against that money, or I can get my uncle who's going to leave me that money to give me a loan against it. So you can come under settings and assumption and go under to other, let's see, settings and assumptions. You can go under other here and specify that you can borrow a certain amount of money, in which case it'll spend more when you're younger and there'll be less when you're older. Now, the other thing you can do is so I think the reason that your living standard is jumping up, it has to do with your borrowing constraints. And it might be that you've told the program you want to annuitize your retirement account money, and it's waiting to a good age, to the right age to annuitize you, or but when you run the maximization, you can tell the program you don't want your living standard to change that much, and then it won't have you wait that long to annuitize. So that's one thing you can do. In general, we also have this thing, which is called the Living Standard Index, and you can specify, starting, for example, at age, let's say 75, that you want your living standard to decline by, where's my, oops. Oh yeah, here we go. If I project the growth to be, let's say, minus 0.5% right through the last year of life, you'll see that this index now is dropping every year by 0.5%. And then if you're not borrowing constrained, ignoring getting that big number, it will, to the extent possible without putting you into debt, will have the spending the living standard path follow exactly this pattern. Be constant right up to age 75 and then gradually decline by 0.5% every year. So, but I think in your case, what's going on is that you're borrowing constrained. And you can certainly email me and we can talk about it, or go to our customer support and put in a support ticket. And Dan Royer, who's our head of customer support for this program, who's extremely knowledgeable about every detail, much more knowledgeable than me really, will tell you what's going on. And he'll look at your plan as needed. If you give him permission to, yeah.
So several people have asked, how secure is our program on the cloud? How secure is it in protecting people's privacies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's a very good question. So, and I just added at the end of that little comment, as you know, if you give us permission as needed, we're not going to look at anybody's inputs, period. There's only a few of us that have administrative, maybe 4 of us in the company that have the potential to actually look at somebody's inputs. And we will not do that unless we're told that it's okay to do that in a customer support interaction. The other thing is we're using Amazon web servers. We have hired a company to try and break into our system. The safe way to really, I think, to help secure your from any kind of possible break-in, and we're trying to be as careful as possible within the limits of our company's resources. But if you wanted to start a new, suppose you're just starting and you put in a name here. Why do you have to put in your own name? Put in Joe Blow. You don't have. We don't care about your name. We don't need to know your name. And if you put in a fake name, you'll be somebody. If somebody, and the probability I think is extremely small, could somehow break into Amazon web servers and get access to your data. They would get access to Joe Blow's data. They wouldn't know who it is. Same thing with maximizing the Social Security, that other program, and ES Planner. We don't need your real names, and so that's another way to deal with any real concerns. But we've been in business for 27 years. We've had no data breaches, and we are paying to have people try and break into our system, and we are trying to be as careful as possible. And Amazon Web servers have their own security protocols as well. So we're not taking any chances with anybody's data. Let me put it that way. That we can avoid. I can't say that we've spent $200,000 trying to secure the data because we're not in a position to do that. But within the means of the company, we are trying to be extremely careful. Next question.
So this is a question from Oleg. It's how would one add a variable annuity to the program?
Okay, so if you're running, a good question. You could enter that as an asset. When we run the Monte Carlo, I'll show you how to enter your own assets. And if we think about a variable annuity as a risky asset, a variable annuity is basically a security that promises you a guaranteed return, at least a nominal return. If there's inflation, it could be much lower in real terms than you might expect. But it does. If I've got this right, a variable annuity is basically a security is promising you let's say a minimum 3% or so, or maybe 2%, maybe 1% at this point, rate of return, and then is going to give you some upside. If the stock market does well, it'll give you some upside, but not as much upside as if you were fully invested in the stock market, because it has to deal with the fact that if the stock market does very poorly, it's providing you this guarantee. So how can you deal with that? Well, you can enter that program as an asset in the Monte Carlo, or you could run the base plan and the maximized plan, which are, again, deterministic, assuming you're going to get a for sure rate of return, and just think about being very conservative in entering the rate of return you're going to get on your assets. On your regular assets, it's going to be a weighted average for sure rate of return. What's the, when I say for sure, I'm saying use something very conservative with the assumptions about how much you're going to earn on securities, both in regular assets and in retirement accounts and in 529s. Be very careful. So I would not, for example, count on the market doing well. So if it's going to offer a 3% return on your variable annuity and you think the inflation rate is going to be 1.5%, then I would put in a 1.5% real return on that, or think about that part of your regular assets as getting 1.5%, and maybe this other part gets 0%, and then you take a weighted average to get your overall portfolio of regular assets might be getting 0.5% real. Well, then enter 0.5% real in the program, because the first two parts of the reporting are really focused on kind of certainty equivalent. What if I knew for sure? Let's be really careful. Let's enter very cautious, conservative assumptions. And if things turn out better, then the next time I run it, I'll see that I can spend more. But let's not assume I'm going to be able to work till 90. Let's not assume I'm going to get a 10% rate of return on my securities. Let's not assume that I won't need to repair the roof. All those things everybody should err on the cautious side in running the program, because bad things, as we've seen, can happen to us economically speaking, and we need to be careful. Next question, Alex.
I just want to make a quick comment on security. When our program is able to have full account aggregation to say update, the program in terms of real life spending, it's going to be absolutely secure. Both the banks provide a extremely secure API, and our CTO can speak to the level of security we will have. Here's a good question. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
By the way, I think next at the next webinar, we'll have Ed O'Connor-Giles come on and talk a little bit about our security procedures, because he's completely knowledgeable, and I'm less knowledgeable, and I think that will reassure people that we have somebody who really knows the stuff inside and out and is doing his very best. And it's really taking probably a third of his time to deal with making sure, maybe 20% of his time dealing with privacy security issues, to make sure we're as careful as we can be.
Correct. Here's a question from Chris. I think it's a good question. It says, even though consumption spending is smoothed, to keep smooth spending accurate, one must update both the asset amount and return assumptions at least annually. Is that right?
Yeah, and we're going to start updating the default assumptions for rate of return twice a year, in January and in June, based on what actual rates were the month before. And certainly assets need to be updated, and that's where this end of year planning is going to come in, because we're going to get the program set up, and we're working on it right now to plan just for the rest of the year. And then that's only relevant if you have, the current assets that you actually have, not the assets you had at the beginning of the year or you had 2 months ago, but what do you actually have right this minute? And that's where people will be able to certainly enter manually their current assets, or provide the information to the program that will then go and pull those data from the bank accounts, from Fidelity, from Vanguard, from the different T. Rowe Price, from your different 401k providers, and that data will automatically show up in the program. And we're going to set this up in a way that we're not a keeper of your information about your account numbers, and we have no way to access that. It's going to be done through a third-party application.
Okay. Here's another question from Garrett. Does the program allow me to test the use of a reverse mortgage for access during down markets? We've had a bunch of questions about how to model a reverse mortgage, or if we can.
So we do have an FAQ, frequently asked questions. I've been reluctant to tell you the truth, to put in reverse mortgage. I mean, it's on our list, and we may well get to it in the near term as an option for people to run. But I'm very wary about reverse mortgages for a couple of reasons. One is the interest rate they charge is very high. So suppose you take out a reverse mortgage thinking that maybe you're 65, you paid off your house is free and clear, and then you've got a lot of money tied up in an expensive house, or you just need the money, and you go and you borrow $100,000 in a reverse mortgage. And now 10 years later, you're forced to move because your child has had a child, and you need to be there to help take care of the grandchild. Or maybe your child's had an illness, or you just can't take the winters in New England anymore, or whatever it is, or the heat in Texas, and you just have to get out of there. Or you have to go into a nursing home or assisted living. So now what's going to happen is the bank is going to say, hey, you took out $100,000 and we've been charging you 5% a year, and it's going to come, and it's been compounding. And yeah, the actual rates you could have earned on investing your money were a whole lot lower, but this is the rate you're having to pay for having borrowed the money. And we're going to accumulate up at 5%. And gee, you owe us not 100,000, but 250,000. I'm just making up these numbers, okay? And I might not be fair to the people in the reverse mortgage business here, so I don't hope to, I might be exaggerating my concern here. So now you have to pay back a pretty penny, and you sell the house, and the house it might sell for less than you owe, or it might sell for what you're going to get out of selling the house might be a whole lot less than you had expected or hoped. And now you have a small amount of money with which to buy another house in this new location, or basically buy yourself into a decent assisted living or long-term nursing care facility. So the moving risk associated with reverse mortgages has not been emphasized enough by the people selling those mortgages or by the government. And if we do include this into our software, we are going to show moving reports, just like we're going to show what happens if you don't have to move till your maximum age of life, but we're also going to let you run a report where you have to move at this age and see what happens to for the period thereafter, just like we show survivor reports. What if your spouse dies in 10 years? We want to make sure that you see that you have enough protection for that person. And by the way, our software now deals with contingent planning. Since I'm on the topic of life insurance, if you're going to go back to work, if your spouse dies, or work and earn more money, then you can specify that under the earnings inputs. And also, very shortly, we're going to let you specify that if your spouse dies, that you're going to downsize your home. Both of these things are going to impact how much life insurance you need, and therefore how much premiums you pay, and therefore how much your living standard can be. So this is the only program in the world that has contingent planning when it comes to your life insurance needs. And I hope I'm not overselling the program here, being too aggressive, but it's really a cool program. I'm very proud of it. We've worked a long time at it, and we're really hoping that a lot of people use it and benefit from it, because that's really the kind of main thing we're doing. We could have done other things. We're really working really hard on this program to help people. It's not every day that an economist can actually do some good. So, Alex, next question.
This is a question that a couple of people have raised. When we release an update when we're adjusting sort of rates of return or the inflation rate, do people need to go and adjust their own their plans, or does that just happen automatically?
Well, things like Social Security's inflation rate that the trustees are assuming going forward, let me put it that, no, not the inflation rate, but the because we are using your own assumed inflation rate for thinking about the nominal aspects of the system. It's also not fully inflation index, but something like the bend points in the primary insurance amount benefit calculation, the key numbers or the tax bracket values, the nominal tax brackets, which are inflation index, all those things we do under the hood. You don't have to worry about those. Something like the default values for rates of return inflation, we're going to periodically be changing and be telling you what we've changed. So you can, if you're using those default values, then you're going to see a different answer. If you've got different inputs than those default values, then you may want to switch them in light of how we've changed the default value. So a few things you would want to change on your own, but most of the, if Medicare premiums are higher this year, the whole schedule's higher, it's all going to be done under the hood. You won't have to change anything on that score. You'll just see a different Medicare Part B premium in your output, and you may not be happy by it because Medicare premiums tend to go up a lot. Don't blame us. Next question, Alex. I think we're actually, maybe we should do maybe a couple more questions and then.
Let's just do one or two more questions. But this is a good question. The most recent question is a good one because a couple of people have asked about this. Can you talk about how the program treats life insurance as an asset? With cash value. How does it? Where do they enter that? How does it deal with that?
Yeah, we have on our plate to have people enter their whole life or universal life policies that have, and other named policies that have cash value, and that will be automatically brought into included as part of your regular assets. So that's on our to-do list. It's actually in ES Planner, and we will be comparing in the results. I hope relatively shortly, recommended with actual life insurance holdings. But we are reviewing our whole treatment of life insurance because we're kind of recommending annual term policies. But people, when they go out there, don't buy annual policies. You don't buy life insurance for 1 year. You buy it for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years or 25 years. And these are called level term policies, where after 10, if you buy a 15-year policy, it's exactly flat, the payment for 15 years, and then it will go up at that point based on what the rates are at that point. So we are trying to revise our life insurance in light of what you can actually purchase. So a bunch of things are going on with life insurance. We aren't there yet, but we are aware that we need to be doing a better job on life insurance. But for the moment, this is going to give you, what we have now is going to give you a much better handle on what your needs are, and then go to a life insurance financial planner, life insurance agent, and have them give you, try and tailor their term, fixed renewable term policies to meet what we're recommending as closely as possible. I would be very careful about whole life policies and universal policies unless you understand them. They can be very complicated, and they can be subtly malfeasant in the sense that they you may think you're getting X, but you're actually getting Y because of the fine print. So things that are very simple when it comes to insurance are worth considering. Things that are complicated and you can't fully understand are probably things that even a trained economist would not understand. I've looked at policies that I cannot figure out a boo about, whole life policies and universal policies, and I've steered away from them. And unless you really trust your financial planner or advisor and they really understand that policy backwards and forwards, I would be very careful to buy anything that's not a renewable term policy. Should we do one more question?
Okay.
Or are we done?
Yeah, let's do one more question here.
One last question. Okay.
This is a question from Charles. It's about tax assumptions. Is there any way to assume increases in future tax rates at multiple points instead of just once?
Well, we do say when the tax increase would begin, but we don't have the ability to do it, to have it, let's say, go up 10% in 10 years, another 10%, go up 20% relative to where it is today, starting in 30 years. We don't have that yet. I don't know whether, we have a trade-off. If we provide too many options, the whole interface looks very complicated and people get scared away. So unless we get a lot of demand for that particular fix, we probably won't be making it, but you can enter a special, there are always workarounds for things you want to do. So in this case, you could enter the extra taxes as a special expenditure starting in 30 years. And you just say it's a non-taxable special expenditure, a non-tax related special expenditure. And then you'll have higher taxes in the program starting in 30 years. So if you find you want to do something that you don't see how to do it, give us a shout, because we can probably figure out how to do a workaround that's very simple and get you to the right answer, if not in the most eloquent way. So let me then thank you all, remind you that we do have this option to, let's see, I'll go back to the PowerPoint, to go log in and go to my account and shoot off this URL to friends, colleagues, and relatives, and suggest that they consider buying the plan. If they do, it will expand your license by a couple months, and we really appreciate it. We really like to hear from you through time. And if you're a financial planner, please do sign up. Make sure your card is on our screen, and we hope that you all stay very safe during this horrible period. It's very dangerous. The deaths have just passed 70,000 Americans. This is worse than Vietnam in terms of deaths, and it's just happened in a few months. And it could become another couple of Vietnams if we don't be very, very careful. So definitely wear a mask, definitely stay 6 or 10 feet away from people, and be as careful as possible. So let me just leave it there, and I look forward to being with you in a couple more weeks when we do the next webinar, which will be about maximizing your lifetime spending, either in a robo way or manually, and then we'll move on in the next webinar to Monte Carlo and risk analysis. So thank you again. So I'll just sign us out here, Alex, or you want to sign us out?
Just